I've watched thousands of people retire over the last 7 decades. Some sail through their golden years with dignity and peace. Others run out of money before they run out of life. The difference isn't luck. It's not about how much you earn during your working years either. I've seen factory workers retire comfortably and executives struggle. Here's what separates them. The executives made every common retirement mistake in the book, and the factory workers avoided just enough of them to sleep soundly at night. Right now, if you're between 50 and 70, you're in what I call the danger zone. This is where one wrong move with your asset allocation, one miscalculation about Social Security, or one bad assumption about healthcare costs can derail 30 years of saving. And here's the part that keeps me up at night. Most of these mistakes are invisible until it's too late to fix them. You won't know you withdrew too much in year 1 until year 15 when your portfolio is gasping for air. You won't realize your tax strategy was backwards until the IRS has already taken their cut. I'm going to walk you through every mistake I've seen destroy retirement plans, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to avoid them. Some of this will contradict what your neighbor told you. Some of it will contradict what you read in magazines. That's fine. I've been studying human behavior and financial markets since 1941, and I can promise you this. What I'm about to share works in the real world, not just on paper. Let's start with the biggest one. Mistake number 1, retiring on a feeling instead of a number. I learned something important when I was young. Feelings lie, especially about money. In 2026, I'm seeing more people retire based on exhaustion, frustration with their job, or a vague sense that they put in their time rather than cold, hard mathematics. That's like jumping out of an airplane because you're tired of sitting without checking if there's a parachute strapped to your back. Here's the real talk. According to the latest data from Fidelity, the average American needs roughly 10 times their final salary saved to retire comfortably, assuming they'll supplement with Social Security and maintain a reasonable lifestyle. If you're making $60,000 in your last working year, that's $600,000 in retirement savings. If you're making $80,000, you need $800,000. This isn't opinion. This is basic mathematics combined with 70 years of market history. But here's where it gets tricky. That's just the average. Your number depends on 3 massive variables. When you plan to take Social Security, what your healthcare situation looks like, and whether you have a pension. In 2026, only about 15% of private sector workers have a traditional pension. If you're in that 15%, your number might be lower. If you're in the 85% without one, you better add another 100,000 to that target. I made my first real estate investment when I was 14 years old. I bought a 40-acre farm in Nebraska for $1,200. You know what I didn't do? I didn't buy it because farming seemed nice or because I was tired of my paper route. I bought it because the numbers worked. The tenant farmer's rent covered the mortgage with money left over. That same principle applies to retirement. You need the numbers to work before you make the leap. Take Social Security. The difference between claiming at 62 and waiting until 70 is roughly 76% more monthly income for the rest of your life. Let me say that again because people gloss over this. 76% if your benefit at 62 is $1,800 a month. Waiting until 70 gets you closer to $3,200. That's an extra $17,000 every single year. For someone who lives to 90, that's over $300,000 additional dollars. But I see people claim early all the time. Why? Because they retired on a feeling, not a number. They felt tired, so they quit working. Then they felt anxious about money, so they claimed Social Security early to calm their nerves. 2 feelings, both totally understandable, creating a financial mistake that compounds for 3 decades. Write this down. Before you retire, you need to know your exact number. Not a range, not a ballpark. Your precise monthly expenses, your healthcare costs, your property taxes, everything. Then you work backwards to figure out if your portfolio can generate that income sustainably. If it can't, you're not ready yet. I don't care if you're 65 and your company's offering you a buyout. I don't care if all your friends already retired. Numbers don't negotiate. Mistake number 2, underestimating healthcare costs by a country mile. When I was building Berkshire Hathaway, one of the smartest insurance analysts I ever met told me something I'll never forget. People are excellent at estimating the cost of things they buy frequently and terrible at estimating the cost of things they buy rarely. You know what bread costs because you buy it weekly. You have no idea what a hospital stay costs because you've maybe had two in your entire life. The Employee Benefit Research Institute found that a healthy 65-year-old couple retiring in 2026 needs roughly $315,000 saved just for healthcare costs in retirement. That's not including long-term care. That's just Medicare premiums, supplemental insurance, prescriptions, dental, vision, and out-of-pocket medical expenses. For a couple with chronic conditions, that number jumps closer to 400,000. Here's what kills me. Medicare is not free. I hear people say, I'll be fine once I'm on Medicare, like it's some kind of golden ticket. Medicare Part B costs about $175 per month per person in 2026. If you're in the standard income bracket, if you're a married couple pulling money from your retirement accounts and your modified adjusted gross income is over 26,000, you're paying much more. Part D prescription coverage adds another $30 to $50 per month. Then you need a METAG gap or Medicare Advantage plan to cover what original Medicare doesn't. You're looking at $400 to $600 per month per person before you've purchased a single prescription. And that's if you stay healthy. The average cost of a 3-day hospital stay in America is $30,000. Your Medicare and supplemental insurance will cover most of it, but that most still leaves you with thousands out of pocket. One serious illness can crack open your retirement portfolio like an egg if you haven't planned for it. Now, I want you to take a second and really let that sink in, because the next thing I'm going to share is where most folks lose their entire legacy. Long-term care is the silent wealth destroyer. The median cost for a private room in a nursing home is now over $115,000 per year. Assisted living is cheaper, around $60,000 annually, but it's still a financial grenade. The average length of stay is about 2.5 years for men and closer to 4 years for women. You do the math on a 4-year nursing home stay, that's $460,000 minimum. Most people assume Medicare covers this. It doesn't. Medicare pays for skilled nursing care only under very specific conditions and only for a limited time. For the long-term custodial care most seniors actually need, you're either paying out of pocket qualifying for Medicaid by spending down all your assets, or you bought long-term care insurance years ago when you could still qualify. Here's my advice. If you're between 55 and 65 and in decent health, price out a long-term care policy. I know the premiums feel expensive, but compare that annual premium to the cost of 2 years in a facility. It's a fiduciary responsibility to yourself and your spouse. If you can't afford the insurance, you absolutely must build an emergency health care fund as part of your asset allocation. I'd suggest at least $100,000 in a separate bucket, not part of your retirement income portfolio. That money is for health care surprises, period. Mistake number 3, ignoring tax efficiency and paying the IRS more than you ever had to. I've said this for decades. The government doesn't care when you pay taxes as long as you eventually do. But you should care deeply, because timing is everything. The difference between a smart tax strategy in retirement and a dumb one is hundreds of thousands of dollars over 20 or 30 years. Most people build up traditional 400 and wonks and IRA during their working years. That makes sense. You get the tax deduction now. The money grows tax deferred, and you pay taxes later when you withdraw it in retirement. The theory is you'll be in a lower tax bracket when you're retired. But here's the problem. That theory is increasingly wrong for a lot of folks. If you did everything right, if you saved aggressively and invested wisely, you might have $1 million or $2 million in traditional retirement accounts by age 65. Congratulations. Now, the IRS is rubbing their hands together because at age 73, required minimum distributions kick in. In 2026, you're forced to start withdrawing about 3.8% of your account value at 73. And that percentage increases every year. If you've got $1 million in your traditional IRA, that's $38,000 you must withdraw and pay ordinary income tax on. If you got $2 million, it's $76,000. Add in Social Security income, maybe some pension income, and suddenly you're in the 22 or 24% federal tax bracket. In some states, add another 5 to 10% for state income tax. Here's the painful irony. You saved all that money to be comfortable in retirement, and now the government is forcing you to take distributions large enough to push you into higher tax brackets whether you need the money or not. I've seen retirees withdraw their RMDs and literally put the money right back into a taxable brokerage account. because they didn't need it for living expenses. They're paying tax on phantom income they don't even want. The fix starts years before retirement. This is called tax diversification. And it's just as important as portfolio diversification. You want money in three buckets: traditional pre-tax accounts, Roth accounts, and taxable accounts. In retirement, you can pull from whichever bucket makes the most tax sense in a given year. Let's say you retire at 65 and you're living on savings until Social Security kicks in at 70. Those 5 years are a golden opportunity for Roth conversions. You convert chunks of your traditional IRA to a WTH, paying tax on the conversion at your current low rate. Yes, you pay tax now, but that money grows tax-free forever and doesn't have RMDs. When you're 75 and your friends are choking on huge RMDs, you'll be pulling tax-free money from your Roth and thanking yourself. Another tax mistake: taking Social Security too early and triggering unnecessary taxation. Up to 85% of your Social Security benefits can be taxable depending on your other income. If you've got big traditional IRA balances and you're already taking withdrawals, adding Social Security on top can push you into a tax mess. Sometimes it makes sense to delay Social Security and live on Roth conversions or taxable account withdrawals, instead reducing your lifetime tax bill by a fortune. I didn't build Berkshire Hathaway by ignoring taxes. I built it by legally minimizing them at every turn. You should do the same in retirement. It's not about cheating. It's about understanding the rules and playing by them intelligently. That's not greedy. That's responsible. Mistake number 4: withdrawing too much too soon and running out of runway. Here's a truth that sounds obvious, but apparently isn't. If you spend your money faster than it grows, you will run out. The math is simple. The discipline is hard. The old rule of thumb was the 4% rule. You could withdraw 4% of your portfolio in year 1 of retirement. Adjust that dollar amount for inflation each year, and your money would last 30 years with a high probability of success. That rule came from research in the 1992, when bond yields were significantly higher than they are now. In 2026, I wouldn't bet my retirement on a strict 4% withdrawal rate. Interest rates have come down from their peaks, and future market returns are anybody's guess. I'd be more comfortable with 3 to 3.12%, especially if you're retiring in your early 60 seconds and need the money to last 40 years instead of 30. Here's where people mess this up. They retire with $1 million, calculate 4% as $40,000 per year, and think that's their spending budget. But they forget about taxes. If that million is in a traditional IRA, you're not actually getting $40,000 in spendable income. After federal and state taxes, you might only net $30,000. So they start withdrawing more to get the lifestyle they want. Suddenly they're pulling 5 or 6% annually. In a flatter down market, that's a death spiral. Your principal shrinks, which means your future withdrawals are coming from a smaller base, which means your money disappears faster than you planned. I've also seen people blow it in the first few years of retirement. They call it the go-go years. You're newly retired, healthy, energetic, and you want to travel and enjoy life. I get it. But if you spend like a drunken sailor in your 60 seconds, you'll eat cat food in your 80 seconds. That's the brutal truth. Here's a better approach. Plan for variable spending. In years when the market is up and your portfolio grows, maybe you take a bigger distribution and take that trip to Europe. In years when the market is down, you tighten your belt and stay closer to home. This isn't deprivation, it's intelligent flexibility. Your spending should flex with your portfolio's health, not march along on autopilot. And for the love of everything, keep 6 to 12 months of living expenses in cash or a money market fund. You don't want to be forced to sell stocks at the bottom of a bear market just to pay your electric bill. Cash is your shock absorber. It gives you the freedom to wait out volatility. Mistake number 5, leaving your estate plan to chance and letting the government decide who gets your life's work. I'm going to die one day. You're going to die one day. We all know this, yet half the people in America over 55 don't have a will. It blows my mind. You spent 40 years building wealth and you can't spend a few hours making sure it goes to the right people when you're gone. If you die without a will, your state's intestacy laws decide what happens to your assets. Maybe it goes the way you would have wanted, maybe it doesn't. Maybe your assets get tied up in probate for years while your family fights and lawyers drain the estate. I've seen families torn apart because someone was too stubborn or too scared to have a simple estate planning conversation. Here's what you need at minimum: A will, a durable power of attorney for finances, and a health care power of attorney. That's the baseline. If your estate is larger or more complex, you might need trusts. If you've got more than $13 million in assets in 2026, you're subject to federal estate taxes. Most people aren't in that camp, but if you are, you better have a qualified estate attorney structuring things properly. Trusts aren't just for the ultra wealthy, though. A revocable living trust can help your estate avoid probate, which saves time and money for your heirs. It also keeps things private. Probate is public record. A trust is not. If you own property in multiple states, a trust can save your heirs from multiple probate proceedings. Here's another angle people miss. Beneficiary designations trump your will. If your 401k still lists your ex-spouse as beneficiary because you never updated it after your divorce, guess who gets that money when you die? Not your current spouse, not your kids, your ex. I've seen this happen more times than I can count. Every few years, go through every retirement account, every life insurance policy, every payable on death account, and make sure the beneficiaries are current. And talk to your family. Tell them what your wishes are. Tell them where the documents are. Tell them who your attorney is, who your financial advisor is. The worst time to go on a scavenger hunt is right after someone dies. Make it easy on the people you love. That's legacy protection. That's dignity. Now, before we move on, I want you to pause this video for a second. Ask yourself, do I actually have these documents in place? Not sort of, or I think so. Do you know exactly where your will is when you last reviewed it? If the answer is no, write down the estate planning on a piece of paper and put it somewhere. You'll see it tomorrow. This isn't something to get to eventually. This is this month's project. Mistake number 6, putting all your faith in one income source and ignoring diversification. I built Berkshire Hathaway on a principle that's almost boring in its simplicity. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Yet I see retirees do exactly that with their income. They bet everything on Social Security or everything on their pension or everything on their portfolio, and they act shocked when one of those legs breaks. Social Security is a bedrock program, but it's not invincible. The Social Security Trust Fund is projected to be depleted by the mid-2030s unless Congress acts. Does that mean Social Security will disappear? No. Even if the trust fund runs dry, incoming payroll taxes would still cover about 79% of scheduled benefits. But that 21% cut would be devastating if Social Security is your only income. Pensions are even shakier. Private sector pensions have been disappearing for decades. Even if you have one, there's no guarantee your company won't go bankrupt or freeze the plan. Just ask the folks who work for companies that dump their pensions onto the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation. They got something, but not what they were promised. Your portfolio is only as good as the market and your withdrawal strategy. If you're pulling income exclusively from stocks and bonds and we hit a prolonged downturn, you're in trouble. The solution is multiple income streams. Ideally, you got Social Security, some retirement account withdrawals, maybe a small pension or annuity, maybe rental income from a property, maybe part-time work doing something you enjoy. The more streams feeding your river, the safer you are when one dries up. I'm a big fan of simple annuities for a portion of retirement income, not the complicated variable annuities loaded with fees. I'm talking about a plain vanilla single premium immediate annuity. You give the insurance company a lump sum and they pay you a guaranteed income for life. It's like creating your own personal pension. You won't get rich off it, but you also won't outlive it. For someone who's terrified of running out of money, putting a chunk of savings into an annuity that covers your baseline expenses can deliver peace of mind that's worth more than the theoretical extra returns you might get by keeping it all in stocks. Diversification also applies to where you live. If all your wealth is tied up in your home equity and your property taxes keep climbing and your state keeps raising income taxes, you've got a problem. I'm not saying everyone should move to Florida or Texas, but I am saying you should be aware of how your location affects your net worth. Some retirees do a partial year strategy, spending enough time in a low tax state to establish residency and avoiding high taxes in their former state. It's not for everyone, but it's worth understanding. Mistake number 7, forgetting to actually enjoy the money you saved. This might sound strange coming from a guy famous for living in the same house in Omaha for decades and driving modest cars, but here's the thing. I enjoy my life immensely. I do exactly what I love every single day. I'm not depriving myself. I'm just not spending money on stuff that doesn't make me happy. The mistake I see is people saving so aggressively and so fearfully that they reach retirement and they've forgotten how to enjoy anything. They've got 2 million in the bank and they won't take their grandkids to dinner because it's too expensive. They won't travel because what if we need that money later? They won't replace their 20-year-old car because it still runs. Listen, you can't take it with you. I'm 94 years old, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that your last decade of life is not going to be your most active. If you want to hike Machu Picchu or tour Europe or take your grandchildren on a trip they'll remember forever, you better do it in your 60 seconds and 70 seconds, not your 80 seconds. I'm not saying be reckless, I'm saying be intentional, run the numbers. If your portfolio can sustain your spending, then spend it. If you've built an estate plan and you're leaving plenty to your heirs, maybe leave a little less and enjoy a little more. Now, I promise you, your kids would rather have memories with you than an extra 50,000 in the inheritance. One of the saddest things I've witnessed is people who saved their whole lives, did everything right, and then dropped dead at 68 with $1 million they never touched. Their heirs were thrilled, but the retiree never got to enjoy the freedom that money could have bought. Don't let that be you. There's a balance between reckless spending and pointless hoarding. Find it. Mistake number 8, ignoring inflation and assuming costs will stay flat. When I bought my house in Omaha in 1958, I paid $31,500. Today, that same house in that same neighborhood would cost several $100,000. That's inflation. It's real. It's relentless. And if you don't account for it in retirement, you're planning to get poorer every year. A lot of people retire and mentally lock in their budget. They figure they need $50,000 a year to live comfortably, and they just assume that number stays the same forever. But inflation doesn't care about your assumptions. At just 3% annual inflation, the cost of living doubles roughly every 24 years. That $50,000 you need today becomes $75,000 in 13 years and over $100,000 in 24 years. If your income sources aren't keeping pace, you're in trouble. Social Security has a cost of living adjustment, which helps, but it's not perfect. Your portfolio needs to grow enough to support increasing withdrawals. If you're withdrawing a fixed dollar amount every year and not adjusting for inflation, you're slowly strangling your purchasing power. This is why I'm careful about putting too much money in bonds or fixed annuities. They provide stability, yes, but they don't grow. A bond paying 3% might feel safe, but if inflation's running at 3%, your real return is zero. You're treading water. You need some growth assets in retirement. I don't care if you're 70 years old. You still need exposure to stocks because stocks are the only asset class that has consistently outpaced inflation over long periods. The allocation might shift from 70% stocks when you're 50 to maybe 40 or 50% when you're 70, but you can't go to zero unless you've got so much money that growth doesn't matter. People ask me all the time what the right asset allocation is in retirement. There's no magic formula. It depends on your risk tolerance, your income needs, your other resources. But here's a decent starting point: your age in bonds. If you're 65, maybe 65% bonds and cash, 35% stocks. If you're 70, maybe 70% bonds, 30% stocks. Adjust based on your personal situation. If you've got a big pension covering most of your expenses, you can afford to be more aggressive with your portfolio because you're not depending on it for income. If you've got no pension and you're living entirely off your savings, you might need to be more conservative. The key is reviewing and rebalancing at least once a year. Look at your allocation. If stocks have run up and now they're 50% of your portfolio instead of 35, sell some and buy bonds. If stocks have crashed and now they're only 20%, sell some bonds and buy stocks. This forces you to buy low and sell high, which is the only way to actually make money in markets over time. Mistake number 9, falling for scams and making desperate decisions. This one breaks my heart because it's so preventable. Every single year, Americans over 60 lose billions of dollars to financial scams. I'm talking about romance scams, grandparent scams, fake IRS calls, phishing emails, investment frauds, all of it. And it's not just gullible people. I've seen smart, successful professionals get taken because they were lonely or scared or just trusting. Here's the rule. If someone contacts you out of the blue with an investment opportunity, it's a scam. I don't care if they sound professional. I don't care if they have a fancy website. Legitimate investment opportunities don't come through cold calls or emails or messages on Facebook. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. If someone calls claiming to be from the IRS or Social Security and demands immediate payment or threatens arrest, hang up. The IRS does not call you. Social Security does not call you demanding money. Those are scams 100% of the time. If someone you meet online starts talking about their financial problems or asks you to send money or accept packages on their behalf, you're being scammed. It's not romance, it's theft. The best defense is skepticism. And a simple rule, never make a financial decision under pressure. If someone is rushing you, that's a red flag. Legitimate advisors give you time to think. Scammers don't. If you're ever unsure, talk to a family member or a trusted friend before moving forward. And for major financial decisions, work with a fiduciary financial advisor. Fiduciaries are legally required to act in your best interest. Lots of folks who call themselves advisors are really just salespeople working on commission. Ask point blank, are you a fiduciary? If they dance around the answer, walk away. Mistake number 10, believing you'll never need help and isolating yourself. I'm 94 and I'll tell you right now, nobody makes it through this life alone. I've had partners, mentors, friends, and family supporting me every step of the way. Retirement is no different. One of the most dangerous mistakes is thinking you can handle everything yourself. Your health will change. Your mental sharpness might decline. Your spouse might pass away. Life throws curveballs, and if you've isolated yourself, if you've burned bridges with your kids, if you've got no community, you're vulnerable. I see older folks who refuse help out of pride. They won't let their kids look at their finances. They won't hire an advisor. They won't ask a neighbor for a ride to the doctor. And then something happens. They fall, they have a stroke, they get confused, and suddenly strangers are making decisions for them because there's nobody else around who knows what's going on. Here's my advice. Build your team before you need them. That means a financial advisor you trust, an estate attorney, a primary care doctor who knows your history, a social network, whether that's church, a hobby group, regular dinners with friends, whatever. Humans are social creatures. Loneliness kills just as surely as heart disease. And be honest with yourself about your limitations. If you're struggling to manage your finances, admit it and get help. If you're forgetting things, talk to a doctor. If you're depressed, talk to a therapist. There's no shame in aging. There's only shame in letting pride destroy your quality of life. Let me bring this home. I've spent my entire life studying what works and what doesn't, in business and in life. Retirement is no different. The people who thrive are the ones who plan ahead, who stay flexible, who avoid the stupid mistakes, and who remember that money is a tool, not the destination. You've got one shot at this. You've worked hard. You've saved. You've sacrificed. Don't blow it in the final stretch by ignoring the basics. Know your number, plan for health care, minimize taxes, diversify your income, protect your estate, stay invested in growth, watch out for scams, enjoy the life you've built, and for heaven's sake, let people help you. If you take nothing else from this, take this. The biggest retirement mistake is thinking you can wing it. You can't. The math is too tight, the risks are too real, and the consequences are too permanent. But if you're willing to think clearly, act deliberately, and stay disciplined, you can absolutely have the retirement you've dreamed of. I've been doing this a long time, and I can tell you it's not that complicated. Avoid the obvious mistakes. Stick to the fundamentals and give yourself permission to enjoy what you've earned. Save this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more straight talk like this, subscribe. I'll keep telling you the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Now go run your numbers. You got work to do.